I'm no doctor. I'm just a guy who's sharing his story of gambling addiction and addiction recovery. But I've seen comments on my posts saying things like, this guy has no degree, why should we listen to him? Or, what do you possibly know about gambling addiction? And I took that personally. While I don't claim to be anything that I'm not, I wanted to give a little more evidence out there to the skeptics that gambling addiction is real, it's on the rise, and it can impact anyone. So, as I said, I'm not a doctor, but I know one, and I sat down with him and I asked him some questions to confirm what I've been talking about online every single day. And by the end of this video, you're going to have it confirmed to you that gambling addiction is real. Hey everybody, welcome back. So today we have a really interesting interview to do because a lot of times I'll get some questions asked and I give my answers, but at the end of the day, I'm not a doctor. I'm just a guy with recovery experience in the gambling addiction world. So I went out and I found a doctor and we're gonna be talking to him today. So this is Dr. Ken. Do you wanna maybe just introduce yourself for the people?
Sure. Hey, Dr. Ken Martz. I've been working with the gambling field for almost 30 years now. So I love this work and look forward to sharing this and supporting continuously. So I've worked at a range of different places, from residential to outpatient, and I've seen a lot through the years. So there's not a lot of times it's not as surprising as and sometimes the fear is that I'm unique and I'm afraid to share what I need to share.
So we met back at a 1-800-GAMBLER conference up in New Jersey, and what was really interesting there was that you gave a presentation. And a major part of the presentation was about addiction in the brain. So it's no secret that people have seen on TV someone with an alcohol use disorder. They know obviously it's affecting the brain. A drug addiction, there's a lot going on in the brain. What is happening in the brain of someone who's addicted to gambling, and why don't people see that the same way as a drug or alcohol?
So there's a lack of understanding about how this is different or the same as other addictions. Because when there's a drug, we think of, well, there's an external substance that I'm trying to get. Well, just the same, the gambling is an external substance, but it's lighting up the internal chemicals in the body. So the endorphins, the whole range of chemicals with lots of long names that I won't get into, we start to trigger them when we start into the gambling. So we get a hit of that dopamine, a hit of that epinephrine, a hit of that adrenaline, and start craving more of that. And then all of a sudden, I now have a need for that. I have developed a dependency on that chemical, even though it's from the inside of the body. And so very often, there's not even a conscious thought of it. Much like sometimes we get hungry and we, you know how you go in the refrigerator and you open it up and you look and then you close it again and say, oh, let me look again. You just start doing it. So sometimes it becomes even very much unconscious.
So a lot of people are probably wondering that aren't currently struggling with a gambling problem, how does someone even get hooked to something? Because maybe you'll remember a time you were at the casino and you lost money, and you'll think, why would I ever get hooked to losing money? That'd be ridiculous. How does it really stick if it's a non-substance disorder?
So one way to think about that is very often, people start with just social gambling. There's a casino near me and I go out on a Friday night and I spend some number of dollars and I win or I lose, or I win or I lose, and then we go home. And so for some folks, it will remain just a social event. So for some folks, it will start to then shift, or perhaps very often there's early on what we call a big win. So it kind of burns into our brain this possibility that, oh, I could win this. I could win and make lots of money here. And so there becomes an anticipation of that memory of the big win. So even though I'm losing today and losing today and losing today, my brain has still learned that I can make lots of money here.
There's a portion of people out there that are very young usually, that are just maybe earlier on in their gambling, and let's give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they're winning early on, right? So if you were to run into someone who knows that when they gamble, they get stressed out, they get overly anxious, they get really involved, but they take a step back and they see they're winning money in the short term, and they don't see that they're going to lose it, what would you tell that person?
Right. So for some folks, again, it may start off social and fun and a bit of pleasure. And when you're playing within your means, that's one thing. Now, so it becomes a fine line about watching for when does it start to be too much? When does it start to go beyond when the fun stops. When you start getting pulled into it more than is helping other parts of your world, to keep a balance. Am I getting enough sleep? Am I eating right? Relationships, work. When other areas are getting affected negatively, it starts to become a warning sign that it's going down a path that you want to watch that it stays early rather than later.
Yeah, it's more than just a money problem. And I mean, for people who are really early on, they're not going to believe it till they see it, probably, that they're going to lose money.
Right.
But when they're experiencing all these other negative things and the money is used to justify continuing, I see how, it gets started even when things look like they're going well in the beginning. So no, there's no one size fits all for addiction, but there are certainly some similarities. Now, you've worked in a couple of different, very, very different places, and I think that an interesting question to ask would be, did you notice any differences or really strong similarities between addiction, working in schools versus working in prisons?
Right. So one of the things to think about is that these are different populations, and so they're walking in with very different experiences. So for example, in a high school, sometimes the average age of first bet is 12 years old. So they may have still not developed a habit pattern yet at this time. With adults, I've seen certainly outpatient, which is usually often for folks that are a little less severe, hopefully earlier on in their process. And I've also worked at some of the residential treatment programs for gambling. And they're very few and far between, unfortunately. But especially when it becomes more severe, it's really a nice place for an adult to step away from their process for a minute, kind of decompress from all the work and actually do the focus on that inner work of themselves. How did I get here? What are the tools I need to learn to be different? How do I reset with my family and my spouse and all of my relationships? I've also worked in prison for a number of years, and no pun intended, you have a captive audience. And so there is a opportunity to make sure that they can have the proper duration of treatment. They can stay for as long as they need. Sometimes the programs were 6 months long. They were some of the more challenging cases because of the severity elements, but that also means they were also more highly motivated in many cases too. So, when it's earlier on in the process, we often think, well, it's not that severe for me. I'm not like those people. I'm not like those people in prison. By the time they're in prison, they're already like, okay, I need to stop this. So there's a lot of variations within the different settings. And always, whenever you can intervene as early as possible, the earlier the better. It's kind of like, you don't need to ride the elevator all the way to the bottom before you get off. It can always get worse.
So a major aspect of gambling right now is the fact that pretty much everyone and their mother is doing it in some capacity. There was a stat that came out that I think it was like 60% of people have placed a sports bet within the last month. It was some ridiculous number. A major aspect of that is just seeing it as normal. It's on every commercial, it's on every billboard. Everyone's doing it, and that's happening at a really young age too. There's kids that are as young as 16. You might be watching this, you might be 16, 17 years old, and your friends could be sports betting. And you're wondering, what's so bad about it? What's different about me that I shouldn't be doing that? So one question that I would ask is, if a young person came to you and they said, hey, all my friends are gambling, but when I gamble, I don't feel right about it. This is something that's starting to overtake me, but I feel like I can't stop because it's normal for everyone else. What should I do?
Great question. So one of the challenges that it is that everybody's doing it. And so I feel like I have to. And are your friend groups liking you for who you are? Your friends groups respect you for, I have different opinions than some of my friends. And actually, some of my friends that have differing opinions than me are some of my closest friends out there. So it can be sometimes scary to disagree with a friend, but if they care about you, they also, you see that differently? Why is that? And can begin to understand that. We sometimes try to put on these masks and try to pretend to be someone who we're not. This is uncomfortable for me, but everybody else is doing it, so I'm going to do it just because I feel like I'm supposed to. But what happens then is you have friends or relationships that don't like you, and you continue to walk around with this mask on and continue to feel inadequate because if they really knew who I really was, they wouldn't like me, rather than walking around being honest. So as we develop that confidence to be who I am, you'll like me or not, but then the people that like me. And so I don't have to worry about that anymore. It becomes very important to develop that. It's real important. One of the things that was said in there is that, if it's really feeling uncomfortable to me, that's one of the first signs you want to listen to. You know, everything everybody else does is not for me. And if I'm starting to feel uncomfortable and forcing myself into something that's uncomfortable, that's one of the first warning signs that I'm starting to go down a path that is, you know, not helpful for me.
Now that leads me to another question. I mean, I see, like, looking back, it's easy now, just being, 7 years out of high school, of the politics and the friendship politics that goes on. You're trying to fit in, you're trying to find yourself. But what if that peer pressure exists for someone who's, say, at work and they're in their mid to late 30s, for example, but now all of their coworkers are putting together an office sport pool, or they're looking to get into gambling? Do the same concepts still apply when you've kind of formed who you are, but are now finding another social situation that you don't necessarily want to be in?
Right. Well, and just like if you go to a holiday dinner, some folks will drink and some folks may not drink. You know, it's okay, even at the office setting, to say, thank you, but no, I don't want to participate in the pool in this time. You know, so, and especially at a workplace setting, there's some things that everyone will join in, something like a potluck or something like that. But when it starts to get into sports or betting situations, those are areas that become a risk for certain folks.
Sure. So it's no secret that I get a lot of comments online whenever I post pretty much every video, and most of them are, younger people, but they have pretty much the same few things to say. I thought it'd be interesting if I asked you how you would respond to these top 5 comments that I get on pretty much every video I put out. Okay. So the first comment, and it is one that I get every single day. I look at this every single day. 99% of gamblers quit before their big win. How would you reply to that comment?
Many do, because some are social. But the ones that are continuing, the ones that are persisting, even if they don't have a big win, I don't have to have a big win to develop a gambling problem. So it's just a matter of how far do you need to go before you get into a problem. So many folks, the next category, the next third or so, will gamble once and say, I lost $20, I lost $50, I ain't doing that, that's a waste of money. Okay, so yes, they will stop before their big win. When you start getting by that, you're already now into the top 10% of the gamblers who are going to be gambling and continuing to gamble and continue to gamble. So by the time you're even getting to the point where we're having this conversation about do they get to the big win, they are already amongst a group that is the most significant gamblers in the country.
Really interesting response to it. I hadn't considered it that way. It's like the win that could theoretically happen that isn't supposed to happen, but whatever, maybe it happens, has no bearing on when a problem might be developed. And that is a very doctor response. I would not have thought to say that. Yeah. Another comment that I get all the time is there's only winners and quitters in gambling. What's your take on that?
So there are winners and losers in gambling because every single hand, every single game, you're going to win and lose. So the trick is how to quit before you lose. Sorry, there are people who will win a hand, but if you're losing the war, what difference does it make if you win the hand? If people were really winning at gambling, substantively, they wouldn't be watching this show.
Fair enough. Another one that I'll see a lot is, I'm up $100 right now. Why would I stop gambling?
Right. That is one of the most persistent issues. It's like, I can't possibly, a belief that I can't possibly have a gambling problem because you see, I've got money here. So why should I stop now? And this is one of the fallacies that it's like, if you know what the process is for gambling and you know that's what got you into so much strain and stress, why would you continue when you have the off-ramp? You're counting that I'm up a little bit because you're also realizing that I've had enough problems from it already. So why would I dive back into the problems or risk diving back into the problems just when I finally get that I'm up $100 or I'm down only $100 or whatever that made up number is? The issue is that it sets a false belief that I must not really have a problem because I've regained the money now.
Yeah. Absolutely. Another one that I get all the time was, you were just a bad gambler. I was good. How would you reply to that one if you got that?
Yeah. That gambling is filled with odds, and there may be a range a little bit of skill, but if there was likely to get ahead of the casino, they wouldn't be in business. So, it doesn't matter how much better you are than somebody else. There's always going to be somebody that's better than you. And it doesn't matter how many people you're better than. If you're still having problems from it, you're still having problems from it. Doesn't matter how good you are.
I like to see it as there's bad gamblers and there's really, really bad gamblers. So one that I get all the time, and we've touched on it a little bit, but maybe it could be like a good segue into some like brain development. How are you addicted to losing money?
Gotcha. So when I go through the cycle of gambling, so I may start with, I have an idea, I could go gamble. And the next I may say, I'm going to go gamble. And so now I'm going to anticipate when I'm driving there, I'm getting a little hope, the little hope chemical gets released in the brain. I'm getting the anticipation chemical going in the brain. And I go and I play and I get the excitement chemical going in the brain. And then I lose and I get the oh shoot chemical going in the brain. And so then I play again, I win, I get the oh yay chemical. And so you've got this kind of ping pong going back and forth about the actually getting connected with that, I hate myself, oh, I'm a winner. I hate myself, oh, I won. I hate myself, I won. And then I get back to the end of the day, and why did I stop that night? Well, maybe because I lost all my money. So I go home. Well, that was so much fun, I'm gonna do it again tomorrow now. So you start to get into this, whenever I'm this sense of like a roller coaster, that I expect that whenever I have a down, I'm gonna have an up, so I gotta keep going, and I've gotta keep going. So I'm not addicted to the losing so much as addicted to the hope of the winning again. So when you think about strength-based, it's like, I'm resilient. I'm not a quitter. I'm going to overcome this. I'm going to overcome this. And so there's a certain drive and a certain power as I'm trying to grow strong and be strong. Now, sometimes it's stronger to ask for help. Sometimes it's stronger to admit that I don't know a better way to do this and be a little vulnerable. And so very often, particularly guys, we don't pay as much attention to the strength that comes from being emotionally connected rather than, well, I think I can do this, and so therefore I don't want to admit to a loss, so I'm going to keep on pushing through anyway. So ways to begin to think about that.
That's perfect.
Dr. Ken also talked about his 2 books, Manage My Meditation and Manage My Emotions. Both of these are aimed at helping you better understand yourself and your emotions. They're also linked down below in the description. In talking to Dr. Ken, I've confirmed all that I've been talking about and researching here on my channel. If you were a fan of this conversation, please let me know down below what your favorite question was that we dove into, and if you feel like I missed anything, please drop it in the comments below. We can always do a part 2. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you want to learn more about my battle with gambling addiction so you don't go down the same path that I did. I know that we can keep living a happy and healthy life, and all of that happens one day at a time.